Hello, and thank you so much for choosing to watch the Last Minute Wrestling podcast today. This interview with Frank Turner means the world to me. I am a huge Frank Turner fan, and it's something that may sound really crazy to have him on a wrestling podcast, but I say, you know what? Fuck it, let's do it, because that's the attitude we gotta have in life. And to use a quote of his, life is about love, last minute, wrestling podcast, and lost evenings. So, well, thank you for listening and watching to this interview. Remember to subscribe to the channel wherever you get your podcast from and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. I bet you don't have many wrestling podcasts wanting to talk with you. This is
Well,
admittedly,
when the request, yeah, when the request first came through, I was a little. I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that I'm not like a wrestling expert or anything. So just wanted that to be clear.
yeah, that's not a problem at all. Not a problem. And uh, don't worry about like the wrestling side of things, because it's first of all that's just an excuse to talk about various topics, various shit. So, and since you happen
Yeah.
to have in one of your videos one of the
Yes.
biggest wrestling stars that there are
Yeah.
in the world today, so I just said, well, why the hell not trying to talk with Frank Turner about it.
Well, why not? And here we are.
Yeah. So, well, let's start with that question, with that CM Punk question. How was that? I was working with him in your video about the Storm, and did you know about his level of stardom within the wrestling industry?
Yeah. So, well, okay. There's actually a medium long story here to explain how that video came
Perfect.
to
Go
be,
ahead.
which I'll tell you. So I have a friend called Ben Morse who directs a lot of my music videos.
Yeah.
He's a great director, a great photographer, and he's a big wrestling guy. And he noticed that Daniel Bryan
Yeah.
had been wearing one of my T-shirts, like in press photos and stuff. And the thing is, like, I didn't know who Daniel Bryan was, but it was like, cool. He's
Cool.
mega famous,
Yeah.
and he's wearing one of my T-shirts. That's awesome. So, and this happened like he more than once. Like he was wearing it pretty regularly, and I think like I had like a Twitter conversation with him or something about it, and it was cool. And then back in 2015, I'd finished this album, Positive Songs, Negative People, and the first
Yeah.
single was going to be The Next Storm. And the whole album is kind of about picking yourself up when you've been down.
Yeah.
Because the record before was about a breakup and about everything being messed up in my life. So Ben, like I say, who makes a lot of my videos, he called me and he said, "Listen, what about a video in which you wrestled Daniel Bryan?" And I said, that sounds appalling. That's because I'm like I can't do any kind of sports. I'm really unfit, whatever. So I was just like, I mean, okay. And so we got in touch with Daniel Bryan. I can't remember how, but we managed to get in touch with him. And there were two reasons that he couldn't do it. One of them was that he was tied in with WWE, I
Yes.
think, like he had contractual reasons he couldn't do this, and then also around that time he had his neck injury, which was awful for
Yeah.
him. And I think he's better now. I think he's done better now, right?
Yeah. He
Um,
came back to wrestling. He had like a 3
okay,
years hiatus.
yeah. So it was around that time. So it was like he was out of the running. He incidentally he still comes to my shows when we play in America, and he still wears my t-shirts from time to time, and seems like a really really lovely guy. So big up Daniel Bryan. But so that happened, and then you know I sort of said to Ben, well, that's the end of that idea because I don't know any other wrestlers. um, and then it turns out there's a punk band from Minneapolis called Off With Their Heads,
Yeah.
and Ryan, who is the singer in Off With Their Heads, is friends with CM Punk.
Yeah.
And Ben knew this. We all know each other. Ben knew that Ryan knew CM Punk, who's called Phil to his mum.
Yes.
So he knew that Ryan knew Phil, and then managed to get his like email address off Ryan, and just me and Ben sent Phil a message, just kind of explaining the situation, explaining who I was, and all this kind of thing. And Phil, to his credit, came back and was like, "Fuck it, yeah, why not?" And one of the reasons it worked was because that was just at the time that he'd left WWE to
Yes.
go for um, what am I trying to
MMA
call it?
to
The
UFC.
MMA, UFC. That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was training for his first UFC match at this point in history, and therefore didn't have any like contractual ties to anybody. And I then, I read up about who CM Punk was, and I found out about things like the independent wrestling scene, which
Yes.
I didn't know anything about, and it was cool as shit. Because when I was a little kid, I was into like WWF, like The Undertaker and British
Yeah.
Bulldog, and that's it. Briefly, I had some of the toys,
The Hasbro toys.
but like
Yeah.
that was a long. I'm fucking old now. That was a long time ago. So, and it was like, so I had no idea there was such a thing as independent wrestling. And then I read up about his career, and it was super cool about how he'd like come up on his own, and I felt like we had something in common there. And he was so cool. He was so like, yeah, fuck it. The one thing he said was like, you will have to come to me because I'm training. Like, I can't fly to England for this. So we arranged we had an American tour. He's in Chicago. So we arranged to start the tour in Chicago, and for me and the band to fly to Chicago like 3 days early, so that we could shoot this video there. And then, so Ben was in charge of this video. So the next thing he did is I then did a day of, like wrestling training
Yeah.
in London. Yeah, but just to kind of, because I'd never stood in a ring before, never done any of this stuff, and Ben thought it would be a good idea for me to have some like
Yeah. To
some
learn the ropes.
experience. Yeah, right. So I went, and there was this guy, I can't remember his name now. He's a British he's a British wrestler, Ed something or other. Can't remember his name. That's really bad of me. But he was lovely. He was really cool. And he, he got Ben sort of hired him to show me a few things. So he showed me like, how to sell a punch,
Yes.
and then like,
Whoa, wrestling
how to do,
terminology. Good on you. Good on you.
yeah, right. So there was that, and then like how to do like a roll on my shoulder, and how to like pick someone up and drop them, and just a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So I had to stay doing this in this like, and it was in this like warehouse in a commercial district somewhere in South London that really felt to me like the kind of place you would go to buy a large amount of drugs. You know what I mean? Like not like for personal use, like like several kilos of drugs.
Yeah.
That kind of vibe. And the day was great, and it was really, really good until right at the end when I really like hurt myself because I was trying to do like a kind of sort of fall and smack my back on the floor.
Okay.
And
yeah.
you have to like
a flat back. Yeah.
You got to be careful with your neck. And I wasn't careful with my neck, and I smacked my head and like whiplashed my neck and like was seeing stars. It was fucking horrible. And I guess this is one of the things I learned through this whole experience was that there is a theatrical aspect to wrestling, of course, but you've got to be a serious athlete to do it well. It's really hard to do well, and the people who do it are serious athletes, and I am not a serious athlete. So so after that, like I had to like thankfully we had like a week before we flew to America, so I had to like go and lie in a bath for a bit and like take painkillers, all this shit. And then, so we got to America, and then, had a day to get over the jet lag or whatever. And then we had the day of filming, and Ben had set it up, and we had a ring, and we had lights and cameras, and we had extras actually, the extras weren't there at the same time as Phil because he needed it to be a secret at that point in time or whatever. So he had to like run out before any of the kind of crowd came in. But yeah, and then so Ben had like choreographed this fight, right? Yes. And obviously the narrative of the story is that I get the shit kicked out of me, but then in the end I win. Because that's what the song is about. It's about pulling yourself back up, and
that's called the babyface comeback.
The babyface comeback. There you go. Yeah. So I did a babyface comeback. But it was like, so Ben had all these moves, and then like him and Punk together were like coming up with suggestions, and some of it was cool, some of it was terrifyingly scary. Like, because Phil, he's not as tall as me. I'm really tall, but like he's built like a fucking side of a building. Do you know what I mean? Like he's a fucking huge dude. He's a really nice guy, but like, again, he's a serious athlete, So there were a couple of moves that were really horrid. Like one of them there was a bit when I was lying on the ground and he was doing a thing called grinding, like
Mm-hmm.
on my face.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't actually grinding on my face.
Yeah,
He
it
had
was
my sort
like,
of forearm
yeah,
like
with the
this,
forearm. Yes.
but he was doing it. Yeah, so it didn't physically hurt, but it was really like psychologically intimidating.
Yeah,
Like
mentally it
I
was
really
tough.
didn't like. Yeah, and like because he, he's kind of going ah. I was like, oh my god, and I'm in my little shorts and everything, just looking like an asshole, and 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 like I think like in the run up to it, like I did do a few weights to try and get a bit of kind of bulk,
Yeah.
and it didn't work at all. I looked like a skinny idiot, and but anyway, so we did that one, and then the other one that was hilarious and terrifying is that we'd done a whole bunch of set pieces, and then Phil said to Ben, he said, "Why don't we do the running knee strike to the face?" And Ben said, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." And I said,
Sounds
"No,
safe,
no,
right?
yeah." I was like, "That sounds awful. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?" And then basically, so I had to stand on one of the corner posts,
Yeah.
and Phil was diagonally across from me. And what he did is he stood me there and he said, "Stay 100% still." He said, "If you move while I do this, you will get hurt. Okay? And if you don't, you'll be fine." I was like, "Okay." So I'm standing there and he ran across the thing and then jumped and put one foot on one of the ropes here. And then with his other leg, he kind of like hit my chest with the outside of his thigh,
Yeah.
but in a way that looked like he'd hit my face with his knee. But just that thing of him running towards me, I had no idea what he was going to do, and he was like, and it was like, fuck! It was so scary. And then, so then he did it once, and then it was like, now we'll do it again, and now you have to sell it. You have to do the oh fuck
Yeah.
thing. And so we got that one done, and then the last part of it that was very funny was so obviously at the end, I have to take him down, right?
Yes.
I have to do a winning move, and it's like, what fucking winning move am I gonna do to anyone, and to CM Punk in particular? So then it was like, so they talked about it for a bit, and we decided to do a spear, right, which
Yeah.
is like a rugby.
Yeah, like a tackle.
You just
Yeah.
kind of grab somebody. Yeah, you grab somebody around the waist and you slam them to the ground.
Yeah.
And so we kind of explained how to do it, and then we sort of like walked it through, and then it was like, right, go for it. And I did it, and nothing happened basically. And Phil and Ben were both like, you have to go much harder than this. And I was like, okay. And then did it again, and Phil said to me, he said, "It is impossible for you to hurt me." He was like, "You cannot possibly." He was because he was like, "You're holding back because you're worried about hurting me." He was like, "It is impossible for you to hurt me. You've got to fucking go for it." And in the end, we got one that was kind of okay. Like, it wasn't brilliant because I don't have that in me physically to like attack someone like that. It's just not a thing I would ever do. But it is the kind of last shot of fighting in the video is me kind of going, rah! And I managed to get him on the floor. But like, he was being great. He was very generous, and like sort of helping me look like I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, because
But it came out. I think it came out for a good video, right?
yeah, terrific video, and CM Punk is kind of known for his reputation that for being one guy that tests people at the beginning. Many wrestlers said that like behind the scenes he was like very silent, and then all of a sudden, what kind of music do you like? And if he didn't get the proper response, it will like picker you. That's why
Yeah.
I asked if you had like a similar experience, or in your case it was just like professional.
No, we weren't actually gonna fight, so he didn't need to like psych me out or anything. He was a very nice guy, and he was very generous with his time. And we chatted away and we talked about music for a bit because obviously he's into punk rock, which is how he knew Ryan, which is how I managed to get a hold of the guy. It was kind of interesting because like Ben, the director, because he's a big wrestling fan, he was quite like around CM Punk, and I was like, oh, it's this guy who's physically terrifying, but I didn't really know who he was, but like, I mean, I did a bit. I read it up, and he's obviously a legend in his field, and good for him, and all the rest of it. Actually, that's the other thing that happened. So after we did the video shoot, it was maybe about 2 months later, we were still on that American tour, and his first UFC fight came up, right?
Yeah.
And we were like so excited, and we were like, we made time to sit down and watch it live, because now we're on his fucking team. Do you know what I mean? He's our guy.
Yeah.
And something that somebody said to me, somebody said that CM Punk going to be UFC was like someone who's played a soldier in a film going to war. That was the way they put it. And I don't know whether that's 100% true, because, as I say, wrestling's very physical and very real in many ways, as I discovered. But like, so we sat down and watched it, and he'd been training for like a year or something, and we would like, come on, Phil, you're gonna fuck this guy up, rah, kind of thing.
You
And
got
I
this.
don't know if you remember that fight. Do you remember that fight?
Oh yeah, I do. Very sadly, I do.
Yeah, it didn't go well for him.
No,
He
not
like
at
got
all.
his ass fucking kicked, and like we were all like, oh my god. And we felt really bad because I mean, I don't want to say he's like my friend, but like he's a nice dude, and we had a connection, and we knew when on the video set we'd been talking about how much he'd been training and how seriously he was taking this, and how much it meant to him. So I felt really bad for him that day. It did also make me think that if wrestling's that hard, that UFC is fucking terrifying, and I never like really scary. Like because when I was with Phil, it was like he could have like eaten me for lunch without blinking, and it's
Yeah.
like if somebody can kick the shit out of Phil, they've got to be like a terrifying motherfucker. So
Yeah. Those two are oftenly compared, but like two very different animals, like UFC
yeah,
and wrestling. And there are in a couple of occasions like athletes who transitioned well from one to another. So yeah, we all gotta be twice as scared of those people because they succeeded on both fields, like Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar. I don't know if you're familiar with those names, but yeah. No worries, no worries.
Sorry. But so what is? Did Phil continue with UFC? Did he do UFC fighting?
He had a second fight, which did go a little bit better than the first one. I mean, he went the distance, but that wasn't a pretty sight in general. And then I think he left. I don't know if he's still training in MMA, but I think that now he has reached like an age where it's not safe anymore to do that at that level,
sure.
at least.
I mean, personally, I think it's not safe at any age, but that's because I'm made out of glass. So
No. I get you. I get you totally. But since before you had like a couple of really spot on wrestling terminologies you used before. Are you familiar with the word mark? What a mark in wrestling means? Which is not a name.
No. Tell me. I think so.
A mark. It's a very weird word because we use it twofold. Basically, a wrestling mark means a wrestling fan, but you use it as an insult as well. Like, oh, what a mark, which makes no sense because in a way we are all marks. We like that same thing, so we are all marks. Wrestling fandom is really weird. All of that to say that the reason why I wanted to do this interview with you is that not only just about wrestling, I'm a huge music mark in general, a huge Frank Turner mark. I don't know if you can see the T-shirt.
Oh, very nice. Oh, I didn't even notice. Nice, beautiful.
A huge Frank Turner mark.
I'm wearing one of your T-shirts under my hoodie.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I had the chance, the privilege to hear you live for the first time 10 years ago when you were launching the album "England Keep My Bones," which was like at their release party in London at the Barfly. I don't know if you recall that particular gig because
I do. I flew in that morning from Germany. I seem to remember, like it was a very, very busy time for me. But yeah, I do remember that show. It was great. That was a fun show.
Yeah, that was an amazing show, and you've been introduced to me because I'm a journalist as well, and I was working from London at the time for an Italian newspaper, and I just had an
Mhm.
interview with the lady, which I can't recall the name at the moment. That was the then executive director of the Joe Strummer Foundation, and you
Hmm.
basically just had your 1000 gig, more or less, like a couple of months
Yeah,
prior to that. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
while I was interviewing her, I was like, we were talking about, of course, well, Joe Strummer, and I was like, who do you think is the next Joe Strummer? And she said, without a doubt, Frank Turner. I had no bloody idea who Frank Turner was, and
Well,
so
that's was that Trish? Was that Trish
yeah,
by any
Trish, yeah,
chance?
yeah, 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 Trish.
Yeah,
It,
Trish.
it, it
Yeah,
was
Trish.
her. It was
Yeah,
her. And I was like,
she's a very sweet person. That's very sweet of her to say.
I was like, I gotta know, I gotta do whatever I gotta do to know this guy and to be at one of his shows. And that show was amazing. And uh, I've been, since that time, I've seen you multiple times, either solo or with a full band. And now, of course, since the pandemic hit, we are not having live shows anymore, but you are still doing like online live events to
Yeah,
save the small venues, much like the Barfly, and
yeah.
and also to help out your crew. Do you want to tell a little bit about this initiative, which raised thousands of pounds, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've kind of done the last of the venue ones now because I've done so many. I did 21 venue shows, and it was
Wow.
always just me and my guitar playing to my laptop, kind of like I'm talking to you now. Like I didn't want to get involved with kind of like too much technology and make it too fancy or anything.
Oh
And
yeah,
in a way, one of the things I like about it is, despite the fact it's very kind of 2020, 2021, whatever, it's like it's stripped back to what I'm supposed to be at the core, which is one person with an instrument trying to tell a story. You know, there's
yeah,
no PA and lighting system, and it's kind of naked in a way that I really like. You know, I mean, out of necessity, I didn't really have the option to do much more than that,
yeah.
but it kept it simple, it kept it cheap, and the shows were all free to watch. But if you could donate, then please do. And over 21 shows, we raised about just over £250,000 for venues around,
Whoa.
mostly around the UK. There was one in Germany that we did as well, a place called Molotov in Hamburg, which I love and I
Yeah.
know very well. So there was that as well. But it was all places that I love, and places that need help. I mean, if your business model is about gathering people together in a confined space, during a pandemic, you're fucked. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and like a lot of people are suffering through the last year, and I'm not going to sit here and say that independent venues is the most important thing, but it's one of the most important things to me,
Oh
and
yeah.
also it's an area in which somebody like me can make a difference, and a measurable difference, and that felt cool to me. And I do think that there are definitely some places that are going to make it through this which wouldn't have otherwise, which I'm proud of. I mean, I didn't donate £250,000. I don't have £250,000, but like, um, I helped other people donate it, and that feels kind of cool. And I gave what I could where I could. So it feels like a good thing to have done with the last year of my life, and also it kept me busy.
Oh yeah.
To be blunt, you know what I mean? Like it meant I had something to do every week. And we did the last one just under a week ago. I kind of knocked on the head, partly because things are starting to move towards opening up here,
Yeah.
and partly because I felt like I just kind of run out of songs. Like I did so many shows. Um, but I'm proud of the whole thing. And then on top of that, I did a few here and there that were fundraisers. I did a bunch of them for my touring family, my band, and my crew, who are out of
Hmm.
work, obviously. And I did one for my record label. And I did one to help me build the studio that I'm currently sat in right now, actually, which is obviously a thing that I've done to try and make a living right now because I can't tour, which means I
Yeah.
can't make a living. So there was definitely some I helped myself at one point as well. But yeah, the whole thing, it felt like a good use of my time in the last 12 months.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get it. And imagine there are some people who started a wrestling podcast during the pandemic. So yeah, I totally, I totally understand that. And did you also take some of your times to write new materials, to produce new songs during this pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a couple of things. I mean, the first thing is that like during this pandemic, I've learned kind of how to be a record producer and engineer and mixing engineer in a way that I didn't really know before. And I've built myself this little studio. I moved house,
Hmm.
and I've been producing records for Beans on Toast and Johnny Lloyd and Pet Needs and Band-Aid Brigade and Divided Heaven. I've been working on other people's stuff, which I love. I really, really enjoy it. And behind this camera, I have like a wall of equipment here, which is great. But also at the beginning of last year, this time last year, I was kind of getting ready to go into the studio to make my next album,
Yeah.
and let's say I had like a 10 or 11 songs ready, and I thought to myself, I need to write like 3 more, and then that will be enough for an album, and that will be cool. And then since then, I think I've got 26 songs on the table because there was a lot of time, and you know, I haven't enjoyed the last year at all, but like I feel good that like the record that's going to come out of it for me is going to be much better than it would have been otherwise because I've had more time to write, which means that the overall quality can go up and not everything I've written during lockdown has been good, but some of it has. And then in terms of that, like me and my band managed to record about 3/4 of the songs in
Hmm.
December last year when the lockdown was easier here.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of sucks. We got 75% of the way through making the album. Then we said, we'll break for Christmas and we'll come back in January and that'll be fine.
Ah.
And then here we are, we're all locked down again. So, but as soon as it's possible and safe and legal and everything for us to do that, we'll finish making the album and that will be out before the end of this year, all being well. And I'm excited about it. It's a different thing for me. I mean, I try and do a different thing every time I make a record. I don't want to repeat myself, but this is definitely the most like aggressive, like punk rock record that I've ever made as a solo artist.
Hmm.
It's really like in your face and pissed off. So hopefully people will
That's
like it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to listen to it now, just
Mm.
ju- just because you said so. And you've been like pre-pandemic, of course, you've been touring for what feels like forever. I think mostly like
Yeah, it does
15
feel like
years
forever.
nonstop, 15 years
Yeah,
nonstop
yeah,
of touring.
yeah.
You have done more than 2,000 shows. I don't know now the exact number at the moment. Is it 2,200 and something?
No, we're 2,521.
You see, you see, that's really specific. Uh, but one
I
of
just happen to remember the number. I don't remember like all the numbers for all the shows. I just remember the most recent one. Anyway.
yeah, and I think you remember the number because you also said that you're well, not a wrestling mark, but an historian mark. You like history, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. I do. I'm a history nerd.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is pretty much a translation of mark now that I think about it. And
Right.
what now? Only like for a few brief period of time that you weren't touring, you were having your honeymoon in Italy. Can you tell me a little bit about this trip in Italy? Because I remember that you
Oh yeah. Well,
like wrote a couple of tweets like that you ate your body weight in pasta or something.
yes, definitely. I love Italy. I don't speak very good Italian at all. In fact, I don't speak Italian at all. Is the best way of putting it.
Don't worry,
But
nobody here
it's
speaks
funny.
English, so it's okay.
Okay,
It's a
well,
fair
well,
trade.
I know,
Yeah.
but like my wife and I, we were talking about going to all of these like far flung places, and then like we were both, without talking to each other, we were both googling what the Italian food and Italian restaurants would be like in the places we were talking about going to, because we both love Italian food and Italian wine like more than anything. And then it was like, why don't we just fucking go to Italy? It's going to be way way better, you know. The food will definitely be good. So, and we went to Sicily in the end, actually, because that was a place that neither of us had ever been before,
Yep.
and we spent 3 weeks in Sicily, driving around, and we went up Etna, and we, we went to lots of different places in Taormina or whatever, and it was amazing. Palermo, it was beautiful.
Solid choice. Frank, thank you so much for coming on the Last Minute Wrestling podcast. I've been Frank Mandolini, and just plug very quickly wherever we can find you.
Oh, on the internet. Just look up Frank Turner, you'll find me. It's easy enough. At least that's the idea. And maybe I will try and learn more about wrestling before we talk again.
Oh, don't worry. We're gonna do. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.